Security grabbed Roseline Carter by the arm before she even reached the elevator. 3 weeks after giving Victor Hale's dying son one of her kidneys, she stood in the marble lobby of Hale Corporation, pale, sore, and holding her side beneath her blazer. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Sir, one guard asked, looking past her. Victor Hale stepped out of the investor conference room in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Roseline's rent. For half a second, she thought he would thank her, or at least say her name. Instead, he looked at security and said, "Handle this." Then he turned his back. The lobby went quiet. Roseline's badge flashed red on the scanner. A woman from accounting covered her mouth. Someone whispered, "Isn't that the girl who disappeared?" "I work here," Roseline said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm Roseline Carter, junior financial analyst." "Not anymore," the guard said softly. That was when Roseline saw the cardboard box behind the reception desk. Her coffee mug, her framed photo with her younger brother, her desk plant wrapped in a trash bag. They had packed her things before she even came back. The guard's grip tightened, then loosened. "I'm sorry," he murmured, barely moving his lips. Roseline looked past him at Victor's back and smiled. Victor stopped walking. Slowly, he turned. Roseline lifted her chin, even though every breath pulled at the healing scar under her ribs. "So you still don't know what your son told me before surgery?" The entire lobby froze. Victor's face changed first. Not anger, not confusion. Fear. The investors behind him exchanged glances. The receptionist stopped typing. Even the guard holding Roseline's arm went still. Victor walked back toward her, each step quieter than the last. "What did you say?" he asked. Roseline didn't answer right away. She let him look at her the way he should have looked the day she agreed to save Ethan's life. 3 weeks earlier, Victor had called her into his private office and said his 9-year-old son had hours left to find a match. He promised medical coverage, protection, a promotion, privacy. Now his security team was dragging her out like a threat. Victor leaned close enough that only she and the guard could hear. "Who else have you spoken to?" Victor Hale stopped security from removing Roseline and ordered everyone out of the executive conference room except the two of them. The glass doors shut behind them. For the first time since she returned, he actually looked nervous. "What did Ethan tell you?" Victor asked immediately. Roseline lowered herself carefully into a chair, wincing as pain shot through her side. "That's your first question. Answer me." His voice stayed controlled, but his fingers tapped rapidly against the table. Roseline stared at him for a moment. 3 weeks ago, this man had sat beside her hospital bed, promising she would always be part of the Hale family. Now he looked at her like she was carrying a bomb. "In the hospital," she said slowly. "Before surgery, Ethan was scared. He kept talking because he didn't want to go under anesthesia." Victor didn't blink. He said he heard his parents fighting about the real dad. Victor's jaw tightened instantly. Roseline frowned. "I thought he was confused. He's 9. "What exactly did he say?" Every word came fast now. "He said his mother cried and asked if Daniel knew the truth." Roseline crossed her arms carefully. "That's all." Victor walked toward the windows overlooking downtown, back rigid. "You misunderstood him." "Then why are you shaking?" Victor looked down at his hands and immediately clasped them behind his back. The silence stretched. Roseline finally said what had been building in her chest since security grabbed her downstairs. "I gave your son my kidney." Victor said nothing. "You personally asked me to do it because I was a rare match. You promised my health care would be covered afterward. You promised my position here was secure." "It is complicated." Roseline laughed once in disbelief. "Complicated? My desk was packed before I got here." "The company is restructuring." "That's funny," she replied, "because restructuring usually doesn't involve security dragging employees through the lobby." Victor avoided her eyes. That hurt more than the firing. Not even guilt, just calculation. Roseline stood slowly. If you're done pretending this is normal, I'm leaving. Before she reached the door, Victor spoke again. Did the hospital give you any paperwork when you were discharged? Her hand froze on the handle. A sealed folder had accidentally been mixed into her belongings the morning she left recovery. She still hadn't opened it. Roseline turned carefully. No. Victor studied her face for 2 long seconds. Then he nodded once. Good. The moment she stepped into the hallway, she heard him making a call behind the door. Find out exactly what she took. Roseline's phone buzzed in her hand before she reached the elevator. She opened the notification. Healthcare coverage TRMNATD, effective immediately. Roseline stopped breathing for a second. Her post-surgery medication refill was due in 2 days. Roseline stood at the pharmacy counter, staring at the total on the screen. $3,412, the pharmacist repeated gently. For one refill. You no longer have active insurance coverage. Her stomach dropped. The anti-rejection medication sat in a white paper bag just inches away, completely out of reach. Less than 2 hours later, Roseline walked into Hale Corporation's annual Children's Healthcare Gala, wearing the same blazer she had worn the day security dragged her out. Crystal chandeliers glowed above crowds of donors and executives. Waiters carried champagne through the ballroom, while giant screens displayed smiling children helped by the Hale Foundation. At the center of it all stood Victor Hale, shaking hands beneath a banner that read, "Caring for every child's future." Roseline almost laughed. A video began playing overhead. Ethan appeared on screen, smiling weakly from his hospital bed. "I want to thank the anonymous donor who saved my life," Ethan said. Anonymous. Victor had erased her completely. Roseline marched straight toward the HR director near the donor tables. "You canceled my health care after major surgery," she said loudly. The woman stiffened immediately. "Ms. Carter, this isn't the place. You told people I resigned. You signed separation paperwork. I signed transplant paperwork while medicated." Several nearby guests turned toward them. Victor noticed the commotion from across the ballroom. "Roseline," the HR director whispered urgently, "please lower your voice." "No," Roseline said. "I gave his son my kidney. And your company threw me out before I even recovered." The conversations around them died instantly. Victor approached with a calm smile, perfectly designed for cameras. "There she is," he said smoothly. "Roseline has been under tremendous emotional strain since surgery." Roseline stared at him. "You're calling me unstable." "I'm saying recovery can be difficult." A few guests exchanged uncertain looks. One investor quietly stepped back. Security began moving through the crowd again. Victor never stopped smiling. Then a child's voice cut across the ballroom. "Roseline." Everyone turned. Ethan Hale broke away from his mother and ran directly toward her. Victor's expression cracked. Ethan wrapped both arms around Roseline carefully. "Dad said I could never talk to you again." The room went dead silent. Cameras shifted instantly toward Victor. His wife went pale. Roseline looked up and noticed a seating chart beside the stage. One name caught her attention immediately. Daniel Mercer, senior board member. Mercer. The same name she had glimpsed on documents inside the sealed hospital folder sitting, unopened in her apartment. Victor stepped close beside her, smile gone now. "End the event," he snapped to staff. Lights began shutting off around the ballroom as security closed in again. Victor leaned toward Roseline, voice low and sharp. "You have no idea what you're holding." Roseline locked all 3 deadbolts on her apartment door before finally opening the sealed hospital folder. The paperwork spilled across her kitchen table. At first, it looked like ordinary transplant documentation. Then she noticed handwritten corrections, authorization forms with altered dates, internal emails printed by mistake, and one document clipped separately from the others. Paternity test, RESULTS. Roseline stopped cold. She read the names twice. ETHA and Mercer. Not Ethan Hale. Below that was another name she now recognized instantly. Daniel Mercer. The same board member from the gala. "Oh my God," Roseline whispered. More emails followed beneath it, exchanges between Victor Hale and hospital administrators discussing containment procedures and protecting family privacy during the emergency transplant. One message stood out. If the donor discovers the Mercer file, terminate contact immediately. Roseline leaned back slowly. Victor hadn't just fired her because he was ungrateful. He thought she knew enough to destroy him. A knock slammed against her apartment door. Roseline jumped. When she checked the peephole, two men in expensive suits waited outside. "Ms. Carter," one called calmly, "we're representatives for Mr. Hale." Roseline opened the door only halfway. The older lawyer smiled politely. "Mr. Hale wants to resolve this privately." He placed a folder on the counter. Inside were legal agreements, debt payoff documents, and medical coverage guarantees. "Lifelong health care," the second lawyer said. "Financial compensation as well." "In exchange for what?" "Discretion." Roseline stared at them. "He canceled my medication coverage 3 days after I lost a kidney for his son." The lawyers exchanged a quick glance. That decision may have been premature. Premature. Like they were discussing scheduling errors instead of her life. Roseline pushed the folder back toward them. "Tell Victor no." The older lawyer's smile faded slightly. "Ms. Carter, this situation is becoming dangerous for everyone involved." "Especially Victor." Neither man answered. After they left, the pressure started building fast. A black SUV sat outside her apartment building for hours each night. Coworkers stopped returning her calls. Anonymous accounts online suddenly questioned her mental health, claiming she fabricated the donor story for attention. Victor was burying her before she could speak. So Roseline stopped trying to handle it alone. By morning, she had contacted a labor attorney and an investigative reporter. The reporter reviewed copies of the documents in silence before finally looking up. "These are real," he said. That same evening, Victor's wife called from a blocked number. "Please," she said quietly, "meet me." They met in a private corner booth of a nearly empty restaurant. Victor's wife looked exhausted. "I didn't know he canceled your health care," she admitted immediately. "I swear to you I didn't know." Roseline studied her carefully. "When did he realize the folder was missing?" "The morning you came back to work." Her voice cracked. "He thought if he isolated you quickly enough, you'd never understand what you had." Roseline looked down at the papers in her bag. Victor had endangered her recovery to protect himself. Not his son. Not his family. Himself. As Roseline stepped outside the restaurant, her attorney called. His voice was urgent. "Federal investigators want every document tonight." Federal investigators entered Hale Corporation before sunrise 3 days later. Employees arriving for work stopped on the sidewalk as agents carried boxes of records through the revolving doors. News vans crowded the street. By noon, every major financial network was running the same headline. Hale Corporation under investigation for medical retaliation scandal. Roseline watched the coverage from her attorney's office, one hand wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. The story spread fast once investigators verified the documents. Hospital administrators had altered transplant confidentiality procedures under pressure from Victor Hale. Company lawyers had coordinated efforts to discredit Roseline after Victor discovered she accidentally received the missing records. And buried beneath all of it was the truth Victor had tried to erase. Months earlier, Daniel Mercer had privately learned he was Ethan's biological father during a quiet paternity dispute with Victor's wife. At the same time, Hale Corporation was already locked in a brutal internal power struggle between Victor and Mercer over control of the company. Then Ethan's kidneys failed. Victor realized that if the paternity situation became public during the transplant crisis, he could lose everything at once: his marriage, his public image, his authority inside the company. When Roseline accidentally left the hospital with the Mercer file, Victor panicked. So instead of thanking the woman who saved Ethan's life, he moved to isolate her before she understood what she possessed. The backlash became impossible to contain. Former employees admitted they were pressured not to contact Roseline after her termination. Hospital staff testified they were warned not to mention her donor status publicly. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as Victor's wife stepped toward Roseline with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for all of it." Roseline nodded once. She could tell the woman hadn't slept in days. The hardest moment came during Ethan's interview with investigators. "I didn't know she got fired because of me," the 9-year-old said through tears. Roseline crouched carefully beside him. "None of this is your fault, Ethan." Across the hall, Victor sat surrounded by attorneys, looking smaller than he had in that giant corporate lobby weeks earlier. During his deposition, he finally faced Roseline directly for the first time since the surgery. "I did what I thought was necessary to protect my son," he said. Roseline held his stare. "I protected your son," she replied calmly. "You protected yourself." Victor opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Within a month, the Hale Corporation board forced Victor out as CEO. Several executives resigned alongside him. Federal investigations into the hospital expanded, and multiple administrators faced criminal charges tied to falsified transplant procedures and retaliation efforts. Hale Corporation's stock price collapsed after internal communications leaked publicly. Daniel Mercer quietly withdrew from the corporate takeover battle to avoid dragging the paternity scandal even further into public view. Roseline's outcome looked very different. She received a full legal settlement for wrongful termination and retaliation. Her medical care was permanently covered. Public statements finally identified her as Ethan's confirmed donor after weeks of attempted denial. But the thing that mattered most to her wasn't the money. It was control. For the first time in years, nobody could threaten her stability with a single phone call. 6 months later, Roseline opened a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping living organ donors who were abandoned by employers or insurance providers after surgery. One afternoon, a handwritten envelope arrived at her office. Inside was a letter from Ethan. "Thank you for saving my life. Dad never said thank you, so I wanted to." Roseline folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the top drawer of her desk, beside the framed photo of her younger brother. Later that evening, she crossed the lobby of a new corporate building after a donor advocacy meeting. People moved aside respectfully as she passed. No whispers. No security guards reaching for her arm. Just silence and recognition. The day Victor Hale turned his back on Roseline was the day he lost everything he was trying to protect.